Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, I've just recently been thinking about death quite a bit. I had already been thinking about it because of all these disasters that we've been talking about on the channel, especially Lahaina, where as of right now, the last that I checked, the death toll has risen to 115, but it seems like it's going to continue to go up. And we talk a lot on the channel about things like the second coming and the resurrection. You know, we also talk about the different classes of people and how they're going to experience the second coming. For example, if you're living a terrestrial or a telestial lifestyle, the lowest one, then you're not going to be moving forward into the millennium. You're going to be burned with the wicked, which is a really harsh thing to say, but it is reality. It's in the scriptures. The prophets talk about it. And then recently, just within like the last week and a half, there was a funeral. Well, no, it's within the last week actually. I went to a funeral. An elderly gentleman in my ward passed away, and I don't know about you, but just every time I go to a funeral, every time I always have the same thoughts and feelings, and it really impacts me pretty deeply. You know, I haven't been to a whole lot of funerals in my life. I don't know what's normal for my age, being 39, but at this point I've been to probably about maybe like 6, maybe 7. I'm not exactly sure. I guess I'd have to really think about it, but especially as I get older, like I look at what's going on. I see like the family, I see the person that's deceased, and I have a lot of like scenarios play through my mind, and just like a flood of different emotions, you know. I'd be interested. How many funerals have you been to? If you can recall, you know, maybe you've been to a lot, maybe not, but put it in the comments below. How many funerals have you been to? But anyway, it's just like it's so weird for me every time, because when I look at my own life and I think about the end of my life, you know, I presume that I'll live to, if the second coming doesn't happen by then, which I think it will, but if it doesn't, I assume that I'm going to make it to, the average age of a male, like before they pass away, like 70s, 80s, something like that. Of course, anything could happen. There could always be some disaster, some accident, any number of ways that you can leave this world. But barring any of those from happening, I just, the way that I look at my life, I think about the future, and I kind of hope that I would die of old age. We'll have to wait and see what actually happens. But whenever I think about that time, you know, my 70s, 80s, 90s, who knows, it just feels like really far away, really, really far away. It's a very kind of like abstract idea. So whenever I see, or whenever I go to these funerals, it's like fast forwarding in a way, by proxy. It's like fast forwarding and seeing what the end looks like, you know. And in some cases, people pass away young, you know, like my dad, for example. He was 53 when he passed away. He had a heart attack. So that was kind of bizarre to look at, just thinking like, wow, it came really fast for him. And then others, like this gentleman in my ward, you know, he was elderly. But either way, just like seeing what the end actually looks like, because essentially you're just living life like normal. You know, in his case, you know, he had an oxygen tank, and so his health was slowly declining, and ultimately he passed away from lack of oxygen because I don't know what, I can't remember. I don't know if they told me. I'm sure they told me, but I'm not sure what the actual condition was. But just over time, his body had a harder and harder time I guess, taking in oxygen to the point where he had to be in a wheelchair because walking would use up too much oxygen. But then the day came where whatever. But it's just crazy how, you don't really know when it's going to happen. It's not like, there's like a big party plan, like, okay, next month it's going to be your death day, so you don't really know when it's going to happen. It just happens unexpectedly. And in that sense, it's a lot like the second coming. It's kind of the same thing. We don't know when it's going to happen. Um, Unlike death, in some cases anyway, the second coming, at least we can kind of be warned when it's going to happen because we have all these signs to look for that we've been given. And they are happening quite a bit. I've been doing my best trying to put them all down on paper and try and gauge frequency and intensity and, record breaking things. So with the second coming, it is possible to tell that it's getting closer. I guess with death it is too, but sometimes, like I said, it's very unexpected. But in a way, whenever I experience it, in a weird way, I get a little sense of relief because it's a reminder that life does end. And I know that sounds really bad. Believe me, I enjoy my life just fine, but I know that there are better things to come. There's better things to come in the millennium. If we all survive the second coming and make it into the millennium, there's better things to come there. That's why I think a lot of us are excited about the second coming. We want to see the Savior. We want to be in the millennium, in a world that's better than this one. We want to be with our loved ones again, those that are resurrected. But then, after that, whether before or after the millennium, simply passing on and then eventually someday getting your resurrected body, that by itself is going to be amazing. I'll tell you what, I am pretty tired of my body. I'm tired of the sleep apnea. I'm tired of my back. I'm tired of many other things. And some of you are worse. And I'm tired of this world. I'm tired how, like, now you can't turn anywhere without there being something bad. And a lot of times it's entertainment, news. You just can't enjoy, like, you can't go to the store a lot of times without seeing things that are not good. And I'm tired of that. I want it to be done. I want it to be gone. So whenever I go to a funeral, there's like this little sense of relief that it does come to an end. This mortal probation, the things that we struggle with, even just like, things that you struggle with personally. Like we're all in a state of being tested right now, and that by itself is exhausting, because you have a rough idea, or at least on paper, you have an idea what perfection looks like, but we all fall short and we're continually falling short. And so we're not going to obtain perfection in this life, but at some point after this life, we will. Don't know exactly how that happens, what it looks like. There hasn't been a whole lot revealed, but at some point we do become perfected after this life, which is a great thing and something to look forward to. So, I always get that sense of relief knowing that there is an end, and seeing somebody else, take that step and thinking about what they're experiencing within that first day or two after they pass away. And the only thing that we really have to look at as to what that might look like is, if they're to be trusted, these near-death experiences that people have, there's probably the majority of them I discount because I feel like they're lying, I feel like they have an agenda, or I feel like it's someone that's just found a way to get attention, you know? People do lots of really stupid things to get attention, up to and including lying about things, whether it's lying about a near-death experience, whether it's lying about being abducted by aliens, whether it's lying about, even just like less grand things like, some exaggerated story that maybe has a kernel of truth to it, but they exaggerate it in order to get wows and oohs and ahs, you know. So, but I this is me personally. Let me know what you think about near death experiences. Are there some that you think are like the real deal? Let me know. But I do feel like there's a number that are real. Um, I feel like you can tell through body language. I feel like you can tell through just the story itself. It's not exaggerated. It's very humble sounding, and it's not really anything to brag about. And it seems to line up with our church, you know. And so, if those experiences are to be believed, it seems like when you cross over, it's actually really good. At least like there's people. Well, there's a class of near death experiences that are not good, and there's a few of those that I believe as well. But in those ones, they acknowledge that they're not living a good life. You know, um, but the ones that are good, they sound like they're really good. They talk about a lot of times they talk about reuniting with deceased family members, and how the deceased family member, they look amazing. They look like they're in their prime, because they no longer are elderly or whatever, or if they had any physical defects, that's gone now. uh, so they look good, they're happy. And then the person experiencing the near death experience, they almost universally report just intense amounts of love, from everybody and just everywhere. Like their environment is just nothing but pure love. And there's many other things that I could say. I'm sure that you're already familiar with a lot of them, but that's another reason why death is kind of attractive. Not that I'm looking for it ahead of my time, but whenever it does come, it gives me some comfort that going to the spirit world, not going to spirit prison, but going to spirit paradise, as we call it, is going to be a place of rest. And I think happiness, being with our family members that have friends and family members that have passed on. So I think there's a lot of good to look forward to. Now, are you and I going to experience that at all? I don't know. That's like it's kind of a weird idea. Like, as we think about the second coming soon, I'm of the opinion that the vast majority of the people watching my channel, myself included, are going to experience death as it has been before, where your body separates, or your spirit separates from your body. You go to the spirit world and then have to wait until your resurrection. It's weird because I think that right now, and I base this, not just my opinion and how I feel, but I base it on these generational quotes that I have on my spreadsheet. I really think that the generation and generations, plural, of the second coming are alive right now, including President Nelson himself. I really think that. And so that means that the vast majority of people right now that will make it into the second coming, that will not be burned with the wicked, will be quickened, right? And then we know that once you're quickened, you live until the age of a tree, 100 years old. And then at that point, you experience death, but not the same way that it's been experienced for the last 6,000 years. It's in an instant. Your body is changed from a quickened or translated body, whatever term you prefer, from that to a resurrected body. So there's like no, it seems that there you spend no time at that point in the spirit world. So that's really good. It's also a little sad because I'm one that likes to experience everything. I don't like missing out on experiences. I'd like to know what it's like to go to the spirit world. What does that look like? What does it feel like? The only thing I know is what near death experience people say, if it's true. So I guess we will just have to rely on the stories and memories of those that have been to the spirit world that have then become resurrected. Um, we've been talking a lot about, these fires, and kind of wondering out loud, are these the beginning fires of the second coming? Um, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised either way, whether they are or whether they aren't. Let me just read one thing just as a reminder. Okay, so this is from George Q. Cannon. He was first counselor in the first presidency. And I have a really long quote. I'm going to just kind of skip around in it, though. This is from the Journal of Discourses. So this has to do with the signs of the times and the way that God works and how he works through natural means. Because all the time I come across people that think that they know absolutely for sure that we can't be close to the second coming because they know how prophecy is going to play out. And typically those people are of a kind of like a spectacular frame of mind when they talk about things, that things are just going to be amazing, spectacular, supernatural. Okay. So let me read part of this. George Q. Cannon says, the Latter-day Saints are in many respects like other people who are not Latter-day Saints. We are apt to entertain views which are not very correct and which may be the result of our traditions and preconceived ideas. This is a peculiarity that pertains to mankind generally, that whenever they deal with the things of God or speak about them, or contemplate them, and especially when they read the predictions made by the servants of God concerning future events, or events that may transpire right before their eyes, they are apt to get sometimes erroneous ideas, or at least exaggerated ideas in relation to them. Exaggerated, incredible, spectacular, supernatural. I'm going to skip down. Even with this experience in the past, the Latter-day Saints themselves are not entirely divested of extravagant views respecting the effects which are likely to follow the fulfillment of predictions yet in the future. Are we not all inclined to look forward to many events which have been predicted by the servants of God as being of so great and wonderful, and may I say so supernatural a character, that when they shall be fulfilled, they will even startle us who believe they are coming, and will compel the unbelieving inhabitants of the earth to accept them as evidences of the truth. And I don't know, I don't know what leads some people to think that everything is going to be like what you see on the movies. This is usually what I refer to as like having a cinematic view of the scriptures and then future prophecies playing out, because I think there's some people that's how they view, stories in the Bible or the Book of Mormon, for example. I know how they read, but when you're actually there, it may not match the way that it plays out in your head. For example, the parting of the Red Sea. I think there's kind of two different opinions about how that happened. Some prefer to see it the way that it's depicted in the movie The Ten Commandments, where you have like these a wall of water on each side, just big and huge and supernatural looking. And then there's others that think that it probably happened through natural means. And from what I've been able to tell, being a lifelong member of the church, being familiar with all the different stories throughout church history, it seems like the Lord does prefer to work through natural means. For example, when you think about Joseph Smith translating the gold plates, you may think of that as something like supernatural or amazing. But in reality, I don't think it was, because the Lord provided instruments, which we don't know how they function, but there's some kind of technology. He prepared instruments to be used to translate the Book of Mormon, right? So it was done in as practical a way as possible. You think about the Savior, when he took dirt from the ground and spit in it and whatever, and anointed the guy's eyes to heal him of blindness. There was also a very practical aspect of that. There are things that are, very spectacular that happen, but I think most of the time, if you were in that area, if you were at the place where the miracle is taking place, there'd be room for doubt, because it's like, it doesn't look all that spectacular, and yet it happens. Sorry, I'm probably not articulating this the best, but I think you understand what I mean. Okay, let me move on. In our thoughts, this seems to be the natural tendency. I notice it myself, I notice it in others. When we read respecting the great events which are to take place in connection with this work, as predicted in the book of Doctrine and Covenants, are we not inclined to think that surely, when these things shall come to pass, all the earth, as well as ourselves, will be constrained to acknowledge this to be the work of God, and that these events to be indeed those which have been predicted by the prophets? Now, I would not for the world say one word to lessen in the minds of my brethren and sisters the importance of these events. I would not say one word to weaken your proper expectations. But my experience has taught me that the Lord works in the midst of this people by natural means, and that the greatest events that have been spoken of by the holy prophets will come along so naturally as the consequence of certain causes, that unless our eyes are enlightened by the Spirit of God and the Spirit of revelation rests with us, we will fail to see these things are the events predicted by the holy prophets. So, with that being said, I don't really know what that cleansing fire is going to look like, other than the fact that it will be fire. We've researched that. I have it on my quotes A through Z. Is it actually going to be literal fire that cleanses the earth? And it seems that the answer is yes. So could these be the fires? Well, I have a few thoughts about that. For one thing, these fires aren't, even though there were many killed in Lahaina and in Paradise, California, in reality, it wasn't very much compared to what you would expect for the earth to be cleansed of the wicked. Okay, and I'm not calling anybody in Lahaina that passed away wicked. We can't judge that, but in Lahaina, as of right now, like I said, 115. In Paradise, California, I think it was 83. So, because someone had put in the comments, like, maybe this is the burning taking place right now. And maybe it's just going really slow and it's been taking place over however long, and I can't discount that at all. But I'm not sure because if you saw my video where I talked about it, I went through my spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of the largest and most destructive and most deadly wildfires. And wildfires don't really kill a lot of people compared to other natural disasters like tsunamis or earthquakes and stuff like that. So, um, I don't really know what to think. But excuse me. What I don't know is if the fire takes place all in one day within like a 24-hour period. Excuse me. Or if it happens over the course of a few years or a couple decades even. One thought that I have is I feel like there's going to be a lot that survives into the millennium in terms of like buildings, roads, things like that. I think that because when I look at the church, it seems like, they're planning on all their assets or many of their assets surviving into the future. You know, um, you think about like, for example, these like renovations and stuff that are going on. Uh, I don't think that the fire is going to like just completely destroy everything. And we've also studied uh, what the fire may actually be. There are some quotes that we've read that seem to suggest that it would be the glory of Christ himself. So in that case, you know, I don't know if it's like when Christ comes in all of his glory, the glory just like consumes you. Um, well, and if you think about it, Moses, Joseph Smith, in order to be in the presence of God, they had to be transfigured, which seems to be essentially the same thing as quickened or translated, but it's of a temporary nature. It's just for that time when they're meeting with God face to face. And the way that it's described is that if their body wasn't changed, they wouldn't be able to withstand the presence of God. So, in that sense, it would seem that that might be what happens when Christ comes in all of his glory to the earth. Is that unless you're quickened, you're not going to be able to withstand his presence. Now, he already has come to the earth as a resurrected being. We read about it in the New Testament when he came to the apostles. He came to Joseph Smith him and God the Father came to Joseph Smith in the Sacred Grove. When they came to earth these different times, the whole earth did not have to be quickened for them to be on the planet. But when Christ comes for the second coming, maybe his full glory will be unleashed and it will consume the entire planet. And in that way, in a single day, everybody that is not worthy to be quickened, all those that are living a telestial lifestyle, will be consumed. I think that's probably my best guess, the way I think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be like a fire that, goes from one hemisphere to the other and just like goes around the entire world. I don't tend to think that that's what it's going to be like, but I don't really know. So I think that these fires are most likely meant to be signs and warnings that we are in the last days. And like I've shown you so many times with all these different articles, there's so many times that people will compare these events to the apocalypse, or the end times. So I think that message I think it's coming across. It seems like even non-religious people will describe them in those terms because they have some kind of like rudimentary understanding that of what the last days are going to look like. So, we're talking about, in this video, we're mostly talking about death. And I've brought this up a number of times on the channel already, that in one way or another, there's going to be this really large event where many, many people, seemingly billions of people, are not going to be moving on into the millennium. Excuse me. And I don't know how ready we all are for that. For some people, I don't think it's even on their radar, because for one thing, they've been lulled into a sense of security. But secondly, there's this like prevailing idea in philosophy that's being pushed where nobody is bad. You do not call anybody bad. And it's true. We shouldn't judge, but I think it certainly is appropriate to acknowledge bad behavior or things that break the commandments of God. And there are many different things. Let's just take, smoking, for example. There are people that, if there's a smoker, they would focus more on the fact that the person is a good person, is so kind to everybody, and that is great. That is great. But the fact is that they're breaking the word of wisdom, for example. Now, does that push them into the telestial category? I don't necessarily think so. I think you have to take a holistic view and see how that person lives their life. But I'm just using that as an example, or like an even better one. Sorry. There's this really, what I think is a very silly meme that goes something like this. Yeah, I'm trying to remember how it goes. Some of the kindest people you will meet are covered in tattoos, and some of the most judgmental people go to church every Sunday. And I can't stand that meme, because that's like an idea that they keep pushing in like entertainment and movies and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, well, actually, it's the priest that's the bad guy. Or, oh, actually, it's this like picture perfect family. They're actually the bad guys in this story. It's where you have like what's it called? Like an anti-hero, where basically this person that you would typically see as like a bad person is actually misunderstood and a really good person. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that's a type of idea that the powers that be are really trying to push. This is like one of the philosophies of men, that essentially absolutely nobody is bad. And if there are any good people, it's actually the opposite of what you would expect. It's actually people that don't go to church and have tattoos and drink and whatever. They have the purest hearts. They're so good. They have hearts of gold. It doesn't matter that they don't go to church. It doesn't matter that they whatever. And it's simply, I mean, it's complicated. Only God is the judge, but I think in general that's not true. I don't think that's true at all. I think that the tendency is, if you are living that kind of lifestyle, gambling, tattoos, smoking, prostitutes, fornication, pornography, so on, there's probably a lot of issues there, a lot of spiritual issues. I think that there probably are exceptions where there are people that are in that lifestyle and they just don't know where the truth is. But I tend to think that probably the majority of those people are, in fact, celestial. And so that's why you find them in that state. Now we can't judge. We can't tell them that they're celestial because we don't know. We shouldn't treat them like they're celestial because we don't know. Maybe they are one of the few that they just don't know where the truth is to be found. And so when they come in contact with you or the missionaries, they feel the truth. And so they make like the big changes and come back to church. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that there are many of us that have taken hold of this philosophy, this basically playing of devil's advocate, and we don't view anybody around us as celestial. Again, we shouldn't judge. I'm not saying that you should judge, but you probably shouldn't be surprised at the same time when certain people uh, don't make it into the millennium and are counted among the wicked. And the reason why I think it's important to not be delusional about this, to be firmly planted in reality, in truth, is that you can know what to expect and not be blindsided by that. Everybody, okay, it's not like you have people that are all good and they're perfect, and then you have people that are all bad and they're always doing bad. My experience has been that any given person that you would consider bad or possibly living a celestial lifestyle often do good things and can, do kind acts, be charitable. It's just that it's like disproportionate. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, I think sometimes we have the Luke Skywalker type mentality where we see Darth Vader and it's like, I do see good in you. There's still good in you. And in Star Wars, it's a good message. I'm talking about the original trilogy with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, the 3 movies. It's a good message, but it's also, I think, a little bit deceptive, because even though at the end Darth Vader had a change of heart and he helped his son, he saved his son from the Emperor, he essentially saved the galaxy from he saved the galaxy from the Emperor, which was great. But if we're applying what we know about the gospel, if we were applying the gospel to Star Wars, it's kind of like a King David like situation where it's like, David, it's great that you're so good with the Lord and the commandments, but the fact of the matter is that you did something that was unforgivable. You shed innocent blood. And in this case, that's Darth Vader. Definitely, he probably takes the cake in shedding innocent blood. And so there's a certain aspect that's not redeemable. But of course, we're talking about the unpardonable sin of shedding innocent blood. But anyway, I think that a lot of us are kind of like primed to think like that. You have like a neighbor, you have a family member, maybe they're like a black sheep in the family, and you have hope, and you should have hope, and you should be kind, you should be understanding, you should not, be harassing that person about, whatever, going to a concert, smoking, tattoos, whatever. You should have hope, But I think you should also at the same time not be delusional. Not see that person do a kind act. They took in a kitty from the street. Like, oh, see, she, they have a heart and they have so much love. And think that by itself is going to redeem the entire thing going on in that person's life. I'm talking about right now superficial things that you can see, like somebody has tattoos, somebody's smoking, somebody's gambling, things that you see that are obvious. But there's also things that are not so obvious, which I refer to a lot on the channel as toxic behavior, where you could have a picture perfect family. And that's where there is some truth in this thing about, some of the nicest people you meet are covered in tattoos, and some of the worst people are church going people. Yeah, sometimes. I don't think that's the general rule of thumb, but sometimes. I've talked about how you have these religious narcissists. Essentially, you have a toxic person is typically somebody who lives their life to get attention from other people, to get attention, validation, praise, whatever. They're energy vampires. That's one way that they're described. And so what they do is they have different costumes, different modes that they go through. So maybe one day they're a leftist activist and they're out, protesting, and look how amazing they are. And then something changes where they're not getting as much attention, and then they suddenly turn on a dime and become, oh, now this person is completely religious and whatever, and wow, and that's what they're in it for. They're in it for the wow. I'm talking about a toxic person. If you have a known toxic person, that's what they're in it for, is wow, and look how pious they are now. I'm not saying that all people have done that are toxic. I'm talking just specifically about toxic people. So that's why sometimes you can see that kind of thing. Or you have someone that, whatever, regardless of their backstory, they're very religious, but they're not doing it for the right reasons. And that's the whole situation with the scribes, Pharisees, Sadducees, is that they were doing religion with the intent of getting praise, validation, probably also power and control and riches and stuff like that. And there are those same people today in the church that will make you feel bad because you're not doing as good as they are. They really know the scriptures or whatever, and you don't. And they use religion essentially as a weapon, or they treat religion as a competition. They may use it as a way to control others, like their own family, or people that are under their influence. So bring it all in. You have people that it's pretty superficial and you can kind of see where their life is and what they're doing with their life. You have people that are more covert, and it's harder to tell unless you know what to look for. You have all different classes of people, sometimes more obvious, sometimes not very obvious at all, that are in reality are living celestial lifestyles. And I think that we would all do well to be aware of that, so that when Christ comes in all of his glory, and if that's what ultimately burns the world and the wicked, don't be surprised if you have people in your life that don't make it. Doesn't matter if they're a bishop. It doesn't matter if they took in a kitty from the street. And if sometimes they know to do good things. So it's like this weird thing that we have coming up where it is going to be a big, just kind of like mass event where a sizable portion of Earth's population is going to be going into the spirit world all at once. roughly, whether it's in a day or whether it is a few years, but you could say all at once, going to be going into the spirit world. Um, that day is coming, and I think it's coming soon. And I think that we should be emotionally prepared for that, and we do that by living in reality at the same time, not judging, but still living in reality. I think there's some people that are better at that than others. I think some people are just completely um, in the fog, and they're just like, no, no, everyone I know, that everyone's good. They have a kind heart. But I would just be careful with that, because that is probably going to set you up for disappointment. If you make it into the millennium and then your friends don't, and that whole time you thought that there was good in them, but when it boiled down to it, they were living a telestial lifestyle. I think that we should probably just be aware of that. So, and then I guess maybe to wrap this up, I've wondered, um, I have no way to quantify this. All I can do is kind of tell you an anecdote from my own life where uh, it was really weird. Within just a few years, I had my great grandma, my grandma, my grandpa, and then my dad pass away, and they were all within just like I can't remember how much time went by, but it was just like boom, 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 boom. And there was not very much time in between each passing away. And I found that very odd. And again, I'm not going to judge what was going on, but let's let's assume that everything's good with them. It's made me wonder. I don't think that was coincidence per se. I don't know if they were like just really needed in the spirit world, and so it's like, okay, guys, all right, let's wrap this up. I need all of you, maybe to help your family on the other side of the veil. Maybe that's what happened. Um, at the same time, like okay, let's just say I feel like both within my family and outside my family, I've been seeing and hearing a lot about a lot of like people passing away. I don't know if I'm just like hypersensitive to it now, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Do you feel like in your life you've had more people pass away recently? I don't know, but I wonder if that's something else that could happen in the lead up to the second coming, both for good and bad. What I mean is, I wonder if, as things hasten, if there's going to be people that are going to need to go into the spirit world to try and help efforts there before the second coming, and so they pass away, like my dad, grandparents, great grandma. And then on the flip side, I wonder if, for whatever reason, if there would be some people that are counted among the wicked that would pass away before the burning takes place. You know, and there could be different reasons for that. If that is a thing, maybe it's to help soften the blow. If you've had a lot of people in your life pass away, then you're becoming more acquainted with death, and so when the big thing happens, maybe it won't be as bad if you've had a lot happen already within the last several years. Or I don't know. I guess I don't know where to go with that idea, but I feel like there might be some substance to that. So let me know in the comments if you feel like you've seen a lot of people pass away within the last few years. I'd be interested to know if that's a thing that you've experienced. But so it's like we have two things kind of to like that are in our future. Uh, one is the second coming. And at that point, it's going to be a big change for everybody. Either you are going to be burned with the wicked, um, in which case, your life is over at that point and you'll have experienced death, or you'll be moving into the millennium, and that will still be a really big change because a lot of big changes come at the second coming. Primarily that Christ himself is here, that his kingdom, his political kingdom, is now in force across the world, and just everything is going to be so different in the millennium. So we have really, really, a really, really big change coming. And then after that, assuming that you're one that made it into the millennium, then you have your death to look forward to, where in the twinkling of an eye, you go from a mortal, quickened state to an immortal, resurrected state. And that's going to be pretty incredible. But there's just like such big changes coming in. And the thing that's interesting is that we're quickly approaching a time when there's not going to be any more funerals. That's something that Joseph Fielding Smith specifically said in Doctrines of Salvation, that there's not going to be any more graves at that point. You're going to be resurrected. It's going to be pretty surreal. It's going to be pretty surreal. Either way, life is short and things can happen very unexpectedly. I hope that everybody watching this will continue to live to the second coming, but we should always be prepared every single day, because sometimes things are cut short in unexpected ways. Again, just look at Lahaina. Dying because of a fire probably wasn't on anybody's mind in Lahaina. If you would have taken like a poll, like say a poll from even just a few weeks ago before this happened, let's say like 2 months ago, and you gave them like a bunch of different scenarios, like, do you think that you'll die because of a nuclear bomb, like a nuclear attack? Do you think that you're going to die because of a wildfire? Do you think you're going to die because you got bit by a snake? I'm willing to bet that if you had all those different scenarios, you presented it to them, and then they put their answers, dying because of a wildfire, destroying the whole town of Lahaina, probably would have been pretty low on the list of what they would expect, what was like most likely or least likely. No one knew that was going to happen. Excuse me. But none of the victims knew that was going to happen. So there's so many just like unexpected ways that you can leave this life. You're just living life, and then all of a sudden it's over because of one reason or another. So we better make the most of our time that we have. And the most important things that we can do is to do like what President Nelson says: gather scattered Israel, both on this side and on that side of the veil, and then and also work on ourselves and do what we can to improve ourselves, to be on the covenant path, live on the covenant path. Again, it's the threefold mission of the church. It's just that they're calling it different things nowadays. It's proclaiming the gospel, so like missionary work, perfecting the saints, like working on people that are already in the church, including yourself, and then redeeming the dead. Those are the most important things in life. Your upcoming vacation, or this remodel that you want to do of your house, or this competition that you're getting ready for, triathlon or whatever. Those are nice, but hopefully that's not your top priority. Hopefully you're giving a significant amount of time toward these three missions of the church, and strengthening your relationships with the people in your life, because that's all that survives after your death. I know that I've told this story before, but I was in a state of shock when my dad passed away, and I was in the Army at the time, took emergency leave, went from Fort Hood to Salt Lake, and I could only be there for a while. It was just like a week or something like that. But within that short period of time, I saw all of his possessions disappear. Things that he had been collecting for a long time, things that he had put a lot of money into. I'd watched this like my whole life, and just in an instant, it's like he wasn't even there. So those are not the things that matter in life. It's your family, number one. It's your friends, and hopefully you find true value in other people. Not value like, oh, I can use this person to help, forward my own agenda. Or, oh, my family members, they're basically my slaves or my servants. Or, you just use people for whatever worldly value they have for you. Hopefully, when you look at other people, you genuinely love them. You see them for who they are, both the good and the bad, but you find them precious, and you want the best for them, and you want to be around them because you enjoy their company. And you can see their value, their eternal, infinite value. Everybody is infinitely valuable. Even though there's countless of Heavenly Father's children, and that's probably going to go on forever, every individual one has his or her own infinite value, and are unique. There's never going to be another one like you or me, So, but anyway, death is going to be a good thing, because once everything is done, once this world, both the pre-millennial and millennial world, once it's all done, we're going to be moving on. Even the Telestials, every person on this earth, except for just the very, very small handful of sons of perdition, the vast majority of humanity, virtually all of humanity, is going to be moving on to a degree of glory, the lowest of which is beyond our comprehension. So we have very good things to look forward to. But in the near future, hopefully for all of us, it's going to be the second coming in the millennium, and we'll be able to reunite with those that have passed away. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.